Imagine like you're back in 1994. It's a Friday night, and you've just had just a little disagreement with your daughter about money. Nothing serious, just like one of those everyday things. So you decide to, smooth things over. You leave her a note inviting her to meet you for dinner at the bowling alley. Make a night of it. Sounds pretty familiar, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a scenario that probably resonates with a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
Those everyday moments, the little disagreements we have with loved ones, the attempts to make amends. It's a chilling reminder that life can change in an instant.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, the unsolved disappearance and murder of Melissa Witt. We've got a stack of sources for you guys today. Court documents, police reports, witness testimonies,
Yeah.
even some recent podcasts that have kind of revisited the case. Our mission is to kind of walk you through the events, the investigation, the suspects, and the frustrating lack of answers that still haunts this case.
What's really interesting to me is how this case really highlights the evolution of investigative techniques over the years. Back in 1994, DNA analysis wasn't as advanced, and the concept of a digital footprint was practically non-existent. So it makes the search for answers all the more challenging. But it also offers a glimpse into how investigations were conducted, before the age of instant information and sophisticated forensic tools.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we get into the disappearance itself, let's paint a picture of Melissa's life. She wasn't just a name on a missing person poster. She was a vibrant young woman with dreams, ambitions, a loving family.
Right. And from what we can gather from the sources, Melissa was a good student, active in her church. She was close to her family, especially her mom. She was determined to become a dental hygienist and was even serving as an ambassador for her college, Westart Community College.
That detail about being a college ambassador always strikes me. It speaks volumes about her character, her drive to succeed, the trust people placed in her. And then on December 1st, 1994, everything changed. It started like any other day, a minor argument with her mom about money. Marianne, feeling bad, left that note for Melissa, inviting her to dinner at the bowling alley to patch things up.
It's those small details that often become really crucial in investigations, trying to establish a timeline, a motive, anything that might help piece together the events leading up to a crime.
Right, and in this case, those seemingly insignificant details include some car trouble Melissa had that evening. Her car battery died and she needed a jump start. Just a random setback, but one that delayed her arrival at the bowling alley.
And as fate would have it, the bowling alley didn't have security cameras in the parking lot. Imagine in this day and age a public space with no surveillance. It makes you realize how much we rely on technology now, for better or worse.
Absolutely. Now, Melissa's car was found a few days later, abandoned in the parking lot. But here's the chilling part. There was blood on her keys.
That discovery was a major turning point. Initially, the police had treated it as a runaway case, but the abandoned car, it shifted their focus to a possible kidnapping. The case went from a missing person to a potential homicide, and the sense of urgency intensified.
The search for Melissa was massive. I mean, think about it. Over 6,000 flyers, distributed billboards put up. A $30,000 reward offered all those resources, all that manpower, fueled by a desperate hope of finding her alive. Can you imagine the anguish her family must have been going through during those agonizing 2 weeks?
And it really highlights the ripple effect of these kinds of cases. It's not just about finding the perpetrator. It's about the families left behind, the community grappling with fear, the need for answers that may never come.
Then on December 13th, the worst possible news hit. Melissa's body was found in a remote area of the Ozark National Forest. It was a devastating blow for everyone who had been hoping for her safe return. And here's where things get even more disturbing.
The location of the body suggested she may have been moved after her death. There was evidence of dragging, and it appeared as though her body had been deliberately concealed. It's those kinds of details that make you wonder about the killer's motives, their state of mind.
Sends chills down your spine. It's almost like they wanted her to be found, but not right away.
Yeah.
And get this, a couple of days before the body was discovered, the police received an anonymous phone call. The caller hinted that they had found something, but refused to elaborate. Could this have been someone who stumbled upon Melissa's body right after the murder? Someone who's too afraid to come forward?
It's a chilling possibility, isn't it? It makes you think about the psychological burden witnesses can carry in these types of situations. Fear, guilt, even a misguided sense of self-preservation can lead to silence, even when it comes to crucial information.
Ugh. It's heartbreaking to think someone might have known something but didn't say anything. The autopsy revealed Melissa had been strangled and sexually assaulted, adding another layer of tragedy and complexity to the case. Now let's get into the suspects. Hold on tight because this is where things get really complicated.
The interesting thing here is the sheer number and variety of potential suspects. It paints a picture of a community gripped by fear, with suspicion falling on anyone who even remotely fit the profile.
First, we have Larry Landrum, already in prison for another murder. Seemed like a promising lead, right? But investigators couldn't find a solid link to Melissa's case. Then there was the man who gave Melissa that jump start earlier that evening. Suspicious timing, but he was cleared. And we can't forget Larry Swearing, who was executed in Texas for a murder that bore eerie similarities to Melissa's case. Same age, same cause of death body found in a national forest. Chilling, right?
The parallels are striking, and it raises the question: copycat crime or something more sinister? Unfortunately, since he maintained his innocence until his execution, we may never know for sure.
It's like every time investigators thought they were getting close, the trail just went cold. So many tantalizing clues, but none leading to a conviction. It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to be cautious about jumping to conclusions. It's easy to get swept up in the intrigue of a case like this, but it's vital to remember that suspicion doesn't equal guilt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the evidence, or in this case, the frustrating lack of it. But the investigation did turn up a few more potential suspects.
One that really stands out is Travis Dale Crouch. He was a convicted rapist who, at the time of Melissa's disappearance, was working at a church camp not far from where her body was found.
Wait, at church camp? That's unsettling.
It is, and what makes him even more suspicious is that he had no alibi for the night. Melissa vanished, and he had a documented history of violence against women.
Okay, that definitely puts him high on the list of potential suspects. But you said there were others.
Yes. Perhaps the most intriguing suspect of all is Charles Ray Vines, a man known as the River Valley Killer. His crimes were shockingly brutal, and he was very familiar with the area where Melissa's body was discovered.
This guy sounds terrifying. What exactly did he do?
Vines was eventually convicted of murdering 3 elderly women, but there were suspicions he might have been involved in even more deaths. Investigators were convinced he was involved in Melissa's case too, but he always denied it, even when confessing to the other murders.
That's strange, isn't it? Why admit to some but not others? It's almost like a twisted game.
It is peculiar. If he was responsible for Melissa's death, why not confess to that one too? It's possible he was trying to hold on to some sense of control, a secret he could take to the grave.
But you mentioned there was some evidence linking him to Melissa.
Right. Remember how we talked about the lack of security cameras being a challenge in this case? Well, there were a few pieces of physical evidence that emerged even without that kind of surveillance.
Okay, I'm all ears. What did they find?
Investigators discovered an old mattress with Vines' DNA on it. And guess what? They also found cigarette butts near Melissa's body that matched the brand. Vines smoked.
Wow, that does sound pretty incriminating. It seems like they were so close to cracking the case.
It's incredibly frustrating, especially for Melissa's family and friends. They endured years of not knowing who took their loved one. Sadly, both of Melissa's parents passed away before Vines did, meaning they never got the closure they so desperately deserved.
That breaks my heart. It makes you think about the toll these unsolved cases take, not only on the families, but on the investigators who spend years trying to find answers.
It's a heavy burden to carry for everyone involved. That's one of the reasons we keep these cases in the public eye. Someone out there might have a piece of information, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, that could help bring closure to this tragedy.
That's why these deep dives are so important. To remind people that even decades-old cold cases can be solved, that justice can still be served. Melissa's story is a stark reminder that evil can hide even in ordinary places. But it also shows the resilience of the human spirit, the relentless pursuit of truth, the enduring hope that one day her killer will be brought to justice. But wait, didn't you mention earlier that there were other crimes happening in Fort Smith around the same time?
I did. It's a detail that cannot be overlooked. While we're focusing on Melissa's case today, it's crucial to remember that her story isn't unique. There were other women going missing, even attempted abductions of young girls.
You're right. We can't lose sight of the bigger picture. So were any of these other cases connected to Melissa's?
That's the question that haunted investigators. Was her murder an isolated incident, or was it part of a larger pattern of criminal activity?
The idea of a serial predator operating in the area is absolutely terrifying.
It was a chilling possibility that investigators had to consider. The attempted kidnappings of young girls, the disappearance of Lori Murchison, the murder of Summer Wilkinson, all these cases raised serious concerns. The community was understandably shaken to its core.
Okay, so we've got multiple suspects, possible links to other crimes, and more dead ends than a labyrinth. It's Honestly enough to make your head spin. Where do we go from here? It feels like we're going in circles, with each piece of the puzzle leading to more questions than answers. So how do investigators even approach a case like this with so many potential leads and dead ends?
Well, one approach is to kind of examine the existing evidence through the lens of different theories.
Hmm.
For instance, one theory suggests that Melissa was the victim of just a random act of violence. Maybe someone saw her alone in that bowling alley parking lot and seized a horrific opportunity.
It's a chilling thought, the idea that anyone could be in the wrong place at the wrong time and become a target.
Yeah, it is. It's a stark reminder of the vulnerability. We all share the realization that even in seemingly safe and familiar environments, danger can lurk. But there are other theories that suggest a more calculated, targeted approach. Someone who might have been watching Melissa knew her routine and saw her as a specific target.
Okay, that makes sense.
hmm
So looking back at the suspects we've discussed, could any of them fit that profile?
Well, let's consider Travis Dale Crouch again.
Hmm.
He was a convicted rapist working at that church camp near where Melissa's body was found. He had a demonstrated history of violence against women, and while no direct evidence links him to Melissa, his lack of an alibi and his familiarity with the area keep him in the suspect pool.
Right, and then there's Charles Ray Vines, the River Valley killer. His crimes against those elderly women were brutal, and that DNA evidence found near Melissa's body is really hard to ignore.
It's true. His knowledge of the area, his pattern of preying on those he perceived as vulnerable, it all raises serious questions. But without a confession or more definitive evidence, it's impossible to say for sure if he was responsible for Melissa's death.
It's like having all the pieces of the puzzle scattered on a table, but no picture on the box to guide you. And let's not forget that mysterious phone call to the police. Do you think that caller could have stumbled upon Melissa's body right after the murder?
It's a possibility that has haunted investigators for years. Was it a scared witness who didn't know what to do, or maybe someone involved in the crime trying to mislead the investigation? We may never know, and that unanswered question just adds another layer of mystery to the case.
It's a chilling reminder that even in the most horrifying situations, doing the right thing can be incredibly difficult. Speaking up is so important, even if it feels scary or impossible. Sometimes that one piece of information, no matter how small, can be the key to solving a case.
Exactly. Even if it seems like a long shot, it's always better to share what you know. Silence protects perpetrators, while speaking up can help bring justice.
So besides combing through evidence and chasing down leads, do investigators use other tools to try to understand these crimes, especially when they're dealing with potential serial offenders?
Absolutely. One tool they use is psychological profiling. It's a complex field, but it can offer valuable insights into the motivations and patterns of behavior of perpetrators.
So for example, looking at someone like Travis Dale Crouch with his history of sexual assault, what kind of profile might emerge?
Well, in a case like that, investigators would likely be looking for indicators of a predator who targets vulnerable women, who derives a sense of power and control from inflicting violence. It's a disturbing pattern, but understanding it can be crucial for prevention and stopping future crimes.
It's a scary thought, but you're right, knowledge is power. What about Charles Ray Vines? Does his psychological profile offer any clues?
Vines is a fascinating yet deeply disturbing case study. His crimes were incredibly brutal, seemingly random, targeting elderly women in their homes. This could suggest a pattern of deep-seated anger, resentment, perhaps a twisted desire to assert power over those he perceived as weaker.
It's a horrifying thought to be victimized simply because someone else feels powerless or angry.
And then there's that strange detail that he confessed to those murders but vehemently denied any involvement in Melissa's case. Was he trying to protect someone? Was there something unique about Melissa's case that he wanted to keep hidden? These are questions that continue to intrigue and baffle those who have studied the case.
It's like trying to decipher a code without the key. It makes you realize that even the most hardened criminals are complex individuals with their own unique histories and motivations, however twisted those motivations might be.
Yeah, and it's crucial to remember that while we need to hold perpetrators accountable for their actions, understanding their motivations can be invaluable in developing better strategies for prevention. We need to be able to recognize warning signs, intervene early, and work towards creating a society where these horrific crimes are less likely to occur.
That's a really powerful point. It's not just about punishment, it's about trying to stop these tragedies before they happen. So where does that leave us with Melissa's case?
Sadly, despite years of investigation and countless hours poured into the case, Melissa's murder remains unsolved. But that doesn't mean we should give up hope.
You're right. We can't let the trail go cold.
Exactly. Advances in DNA technology are happening all the time. What seems impossible to solve today might be easily cracked tomorrow with new techniques. There's always the chance of a new witness coming forward, or maybe a fresh set of eyes on the evidence could spot something that was previously missed. And most importantly, the unwavering dedication of investigators is a testament to the fact that they haven't given up on finding justice for Melissa.
It's a powerful reminder that even the most complex mysteries can be solved, and that justice, while sometimes delayed, is not always out of reach.
Melissa's story is a tragic illustration of how fragile life can be, how random acts of violence can shatter families and communities, and how important it is to never stop fighting for justice for the victims and for those left behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But her story also reminds us of the resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering pursuit of truth, and the enduring power of hope. Even in the face of such darkness, those are the things that keep us going, that inspire us to keep searching for answers, to keep fighting for a world where tragedies like this are less likely to happen.
Beautifully said. And remember, if you have any information about Melissa's case, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem, please reach out to the authorities. Your tip could be the missing piece that finally brings closure to this case and some measure of peace to those who loved her.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the unsolved murder of Melissa Witt. It's a story that stays with you, a reminder that we must never stop seeking justice for Melissa, for her family, and for all victims of unsolved crimes.